Warning, this video will contain visual and dialogue spoilers. Watch at your own discretion.
Good morning.
Hey, what's up good people, it's YellowMotion here and welcome to my final Devil May Cry 5 story, theory and analysis video. With DMC5 just around the corner of its release, Capcom went ahead and out of nowhere released a final trailer for DMC5. And oh boy, is it a spoiler-filled trailer as they revealed the man himself, Virgil. As I already had released my video talking mainly about Nero and Virgil, there was still Dante left as I ended my last video with how he would fit into the picture and why he is so determined to finish his job to kill the Demon King. So if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend to do that first, as this one is a direct follow-up on it. But I have to tell you something guys, with Capcom's final trailer being released, I was really surprised and flabbergasted. And not because we saw Virgil in it, as that's something I expected all along, but the whole vibe of the trailer and especially how they showed Virgil in its entirety was the most shocking part for me, as it pretty much changed quite a few things for me, and I will tell you everything about it in this final DMC5 trailer analysis and theory video. And just like the previous ones, I'm not holding back, as I will consider every bit of info and media that has officially been released so far, including clips up to Mission 11. So if you've seen them, you're good. If you simply want to go in blind on playing and experiencing the game for yourself, I fully respect that as a fan, and I can only say that don't watch this video right now. So you have been warned. But before we start guys, first make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel with the notification bell turned on to keep up to date with more DMC5 content. Alright, finally, let's get right into it.
This is a trial from the heavens above.
So how is Dante's involvement in the story of DMC5, and when does his part start to play? Well, it starts of course with V being introduced by Morrison to Dante, but it's not how the game will start, as you'll start to see this scene much later on in the game, and plays Dante much later on. So we all know that the game starts with a prologue, and you only play as Nero in it, and start inside the demon tree. The demon tree already has erupted, and somehow Nero and Dante are in it, where V has both led them to this place. Now we know for sure that this was on May the 15th, because when Nero and Nico arrive at Redgrave City, it's on June 15, 1 month later. And from that point the game continues and we see the events unfold. Playing as Dante at this specific event comes later on, and you'll recap this mission in more detail to actually see what has really happened from Dante's perspective. Now we know that Nero and V's missions will be up to around 8 to 9. We also know that Dante fights against Cavalier Angelo in Mission 11, meaning that it's Mission 10 where Dante will wake up and gain the Sparta Sword from V. But at the same time, V was seeking the Sparta Sword, and when he finds it, he also finds Dante with it. And when he does, for some reason, he wants to stab him with it. And we know now what really happens, as when V tries to stab Dante, he wakes up. And Dante is still determined to finish the job and to kill Urizen. But why? Well, we get to see a flashback where Morrison comes to Dante with a new job, and the reason why Dante is intrigued wasn't because V said he needed his help, but it's something else. As V says,
"This is special."
Special? Okay, so what's so special about this one?
This demon is your reason. Your reason for fighting.
This demon got a name?
So with Dante saying this demon got a name, I strongly believe V says a name that triggers Dante's real interest, and that name could either be Modus himself or in this case Virgil. But I have a strong feeling V will say is Virgil, and here's why. You see, when Dante, Trish and Lady arrive at the demon tree, Dante says,
Guess I get to see it with my own eyes. If it really is you.
As he's referring to his brother, and by that referring to Virgil, and even more foreshadowing that Urizen could be really Virgil. Then we also have this scene from the TGS trailer where Dante says,
Jackpot.
As Dante looks very serious and says jackpot, as if he is confirming it for himself that is indeed Virgil himself. And the way Dante looks and expresses himself really shows that he's sure that he's fighting against Virgil. Now we know that he loses against Urizen and his rebellion sword gets broken with it. But now with the newest final trailer, we actually see Dante again, but 2 times. One in his regular Devil Trigger form, and one in his Majin perfect Devil Trigger form. So when we see Dante in his normal Devil Trigger, we can safely assume that this is still the fight where Dante fought Urizen for the first time, as the environment has the same color palette towards blue when Dante fought him. Since the second time when Nero fights against Urizen, and also Dante in his Majin form against him, you can see that the room is much more red and the lighting is also different. And in this scene right here where Dante charges against Urizen with his Sparta sword is also very interesting. Since it seems that after Dante was defeated and his rebellion sword was broken, Urizen wanted to capture Dante, just like he captured Lady and Trish. After all, the Sparta sword was thrown away from Trish, and I assume that somehow Dante called the sword to him at the very last minute when he was at the brink of being taken over by Urizen. And when he gained the sword, it most likely gave him power and returned him in his Devil Trigger. But still, he is no match to Urizen as he gets pushed away real hard and flies away. Now, something really interesting about this is that Dante got knocked out so hard by Urizen that he pretty much ended at the place where V found Dante along with the Sparta sword. Since after all, Dante still had it in his hand when Urizen smacked him away. And with Dante out of the picture, Urizen took over Trish and Lady.
I have plans for the both of you.
We already know that later on in the game, Urizen used Trish as a vessel for Cavalier Angelo, as Dante fought against him and freed her. And I assume Lady is being used for one of the bosses as well. And it could be very likely that Lady is an Artemis that Nero fights and pretty much rescues her. You see, since at the point of Dante's arrival much later on in the game, we see that Lady is in the van of Nico, which could mean they could have already saved her before meeting Dante. So in this final trailer we see Dante in his perfect Devil Trigger form, his Majin form. We also saw this a bit in the TGA trailer, along with his new sword. Now I already explained this a while ago that the design is very reminiscent to Dante's perfect Devil Trigger design that was shown in the art book of DMC4, but it never made it into the game. And from what we've seen in the new clips, Dante visits his old house, where we also see the family portrait of the Sparta family. And I think that Dante pretty much awakens his true form right here. As I've also mentioned before, that Dante's new sword could be very well a new weapon. It could also be the Sparta sword himself in its true form. So it all could be very possible that at this moment and at this place where Dante is in his house, certain memories start to come back, as it's very likely that at this moment Dante will remember this scene of the day that his mother got killed by the army of Mundus, where she hided Dante and tells him to stay there and start a new life as someone else. Now this is a clear reference that Dante later on took the alias of Tony Redgrave, as told in the novel of Devil May Cry. With that, the Sparta sword could be activated and unlock its true powers that merges with Dante as we see him surrounded in this red vibrant energy that unlocks his true powers of the Sparta sword and with it his new Devil Trigger form, as this is very reminiscent to how Dante was awakened in his Devil Trigger form in DMC3. Now something very crazy is that it could also mean that somehow Dante is getting stabbed again. When he was stabbed by his own rebellion, it awakened his sword and it awakened his Devil Trigger as well. So what if he gets stabbed by the Sparta sword? Just thought. As for Nero, he will get a chance to fight against Urizen, but again, even with his new Devil Breaker arms, it seems that he doesn't stand a chance against him. And just when Urizen is taking Nero captured, that's when I think that Dante in his Majin Devil Trigger form will arrive, as we now see it in this new trailer, where Urizen himself says,
Who dares interfere?
So at the beginning guys, I told you that I was pretty surprised by this final spoiler trailer of DMC5, and not because we saw Virgil in it, but it was the way he was portrayed and revealed. As said, the whole trailer pretty much showed what's happening at the very end of the game, as the whole place starts to tear down and crumble. And when Virgil was revealed, you can clearly see that Dante's face isn't exactly happy, as it sort of says it's bad news. And that along with the long showcase of Urizen in this trailer and the lines that he is saying really foreshadows as if Virgil is going to be the real bad guy of the game and the final boss. And from this point, where the beam of light comes out, we can clearly see someone lying there, and it's massive. Pretty much the same size as Urizen is. So what's the big deal about it? Well guys, hear me out. As said in my previous video, Hideaki Itsuno mentioned that at mission 12, the real game will start. So pretty much after the point where Dante will defeat Cavalier Angelo, assuming that at this point you will most likely know what's really going on and why everybody wants to kill Urizen so bad. So what about it? Well, you see, just like in previous DMC games, DMC5 will have 20 missions in total, excluding the prologue. The same as every other DMC game we've seen so far. And pretty much as in other games, such as DMC3 and DMC4, around mission 12 or 13 we get to see one of the big plot twists of the game. In DMC3, for example, being that Arkham was the one that fooled everyone, in order for his plans to work out. So I expect something like that during or after mission 12, where we get this big oh my god what the hell moment, and from there on, it's all down to fight and to defeat additional bosses until you arrive at the final boss of the game. And this final spoiler trailer of DMC5 just gives me that whole vibe, that we're here. It's the end, and it's Virgil. You have to fight against him, as if he is the final boss himself, and not Urizen. And I'm really convinced of this right now, because I never took Urizen as the final boss of this game, as in being revealed here, where the whole place starts to tear down and fall apart, along with Nero's and Dante's face expression, as at this point I think that Urizen is already defeated, and Virgil emerged from it. So that made me rethink quite a lot of things regarding to the story of DMC5, but also the way it's been presented by Capcom. So for a long time, one of the theories I had was that I thought that Mundus would be the true main villain, and he would be revealed once Urizen would be defeated. But after seeing Virgil in this trailer and how he was shown, I'm reconsidering it, and I don't even think that Mundus will have a part in the story at all. Sure, maybe he will be mentioned quite a few times in the game, but given the set amount of missions and story time, I don't think that he will appear in the game at all. Which also means that right now, I don't think that V really doesn't have to do much with Mundus anymore, even though the many references are there, such as his familiars. And regarding Virgil, first I thought that when Virgil was back from the underworld, he somehow would be on the good side. After all, after having been brainwashed and being used as a puppet by Mundus for so many years. But now when I look at this in the final trailer and assume that he will be the final boss, I can only assume that he still might be on his journey to seek more power, as that's pretty much been the trademark of him in DMC3, as he tried to do that but failed to gain it, especially after having fighting against Dante that power isn't everything. Because at this time he was 19 years old, and now many years have passed, so I assumed wouldn't he have learned by now that it's not the solution?
I need more power.
This trailer really gives the vibe that he is the bad guy. In my previous video I also showed the similarities to Urizen and Virgil's Devil Trigger design. As of right now I really do think that Urizen is Virgil himself, and somehow he became him by his demonic side being taken over, as maybe that's why Virgil was saying that he was running out of time because he wanted to prevent it from happening, but it was too late for that, assuming he wanted to prevent it. And Dante pretty much confirms it for himself, that is Virgil when he first sees Urizen for the first time, and says jackpot. And as mentioned, I do think that it's right here at this place where Dante will fight against Urizen and will defeat him, and when he does it, we see that Virgil will emerge from it, as this blue light emerges out of a big chunk of body, which I think is Urizen. But of course there are still things I absolutely believe to this day, and didn't have a change of mind about it. As I mentioned this in my video a long time ago, that I'm still convinced that Virgil doesn't know who Nero is, nor will he remember that he had a son or him being a father. And the same of course applies to Nero, as the only person that knows about this is most likely Dante. As back in DMC4, after several encounters, I think Dante was pretty much convinced that Nero was Virgil's son, as that's why he gave the Yamato sword to Nero and entrusted it to him. As he also pretty much saw how the sword reacted to Nero and it activated his devil trigger. And this makes also sense when Dante tells Nero dead weight, not because he thinks that Nero is useless, but because he knows he's family and doesn't want to see him get hurt. But Nero doesn't understand this and of course assumes that Dante thinks he can't handle it. And that's why at a point in the story I think that it's Dante that's going to tell both Nero and Virgil that they're father and son. And once again, as I've said before, a confrontation between Nero and Virgil will be unavoidable. And as mentioned in my previous video, Nero will awaken his true devil trigger, as it's hinted many times during the game, most notably in the DMC5 logo, where the logo itself starts to grow as a pair of wings behind Nero's back. foreshadowing it. And we can see that now very clearly in the scene of the final trailer where the blue wings start to emerge from Nero and the DMC logo is once again placed on top of it. And I think that this will most likely happen when Nero is full of emotion after already knowing that Virgil is his father. And I wouldn't be surprised if his devil trigger design would be inspired from the design he had in the DMC4 art book. And with everything being said, there's one last thing I want to say, and it's regarding to V. As said before, I don't think that Mundus will have the bigger picture, given what I've seen from this trailer, as the story is already focusing on Dante, Nero and Virgil, and things need to be settled first. And with that, V pretty much won't have to do anything with Mundus. But when I think about it, I should have seen things for what they are in the first place, and assume it plain and simple instead of thinking too much about it, which is that V somehow is linked to Virgil, yet he could be his own entity, but I'm far more convinced that the personality of Virgil, or Virgil himself, or his demonic side, the bad side, is in Urizen rather than it is in V. But also when looking deeper into it, and also rethinking regarding V's battles theme Crimson Cloud, in the lyrics it says having a dark side, fight for your life, brothers in the dark, and split myself in two, and it's hard to ignore it. So if Virgil is truly on the bad side and really just wanted more power by taking back the Yamato, could mean that his demonic side was taking over him, and from that Urizen was created. But it could also mean that V was created from what was left from Virgil's human side, as after all, the sons of Sparta are half human and half demon, and Virgil always hated his human side and fully embraced his demonic side, meaning that V could be the one who really wanted to prevent all of this by seeking out Dante and Nero to kill Urizen and take out his demonic side. And also this scene right here where V says,
This is my last request.
it could mean that since he's starting to deteriorate and pretty much doesn't have much time left, maybe because he's dying, he must see this through or else Urizen will take over completely. And at this point where Virgil starts to appear from the blue light that is emit from the ground, it could mean that after Urizen was defeated, V somehow wanted to finish the job and to kill him. Urizen took the opportunity and somehow used V to regain his true and natural form, as we see that when Virgil is revealed, since we don't see V anymore at any place. It indicates that he is gone. Where Virgil once split himself into two, seems that both Urizen and V needed to come together or being taken over one by the other for Virgil to come back to life. But look guys, whatever will happen, whether V is Virgil, V being Urizen, or the both of them, it's fine by me. As long as DMC5 will have a good story, that's all that matters. And there you have it guys, this was my final story and theory analysis video for Devil May Cry 5. I hope you had a good one and enjoyed the video. But the most important thing for me is, what do you guys think of all of this? Do you really think that Urizen is Virgil? Is V Virgil? Or could it be that Virgil could be the both of them? Also, do you think that Dante is convinced that Urizen is Virgil? Or is it just to fool us? And lastly, what do you think Nero will do when he finds out that Virgil is his father? And how do you think Virgil will react when he finds out that he has a son? In any case, you can agree or disagree with my points, but whatever you think, jump into the comment section below and let's have a great discussion with each other by leaving your own thoughts and speculations. And while you're here guys, why don't you like and share this video, as it helps me greatly, and become a subscriber to my channel. And you can also find me on social media simply at YellowMotion, and on Instagram as well at YellowMotion Gaming. Alright, that was it, my final analysis video for Devil May Cry 5. I'll just say let's look forward to the release and celebrate one thing guys, that DMC is finally back. So once again guys, thanks a lot for being here and thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.